the episode. Editor Lexi talking here. I just want to let you guys know before the episode begins that we're going to talk about some more serious topics in today's episode. We're going to be talking about the book Night by Elie Weisel, and if you've read it, then you know it talks about some more sensitive topics such as the Holocaust, torture, World War II, concentration camps, stuff like that. Stuff that if you don't want to hear us talking about it, then we advise you to skip this episode and move on to the next one. Um, we know that this is a little bit out of our range and something we usually wouldn't make an episode on, but Brennan, he read this book recently in his English class and had a creative project assignment on it, and we figured that we would talk about this book on our show because it is a good learning experience. Just even talking about the book and hearing about it. If you don't want to listen to this episode, then we totally get it. One thing I will say though is you should definitely read this book if you've got the free time and if you're willing to. It's a really, really good book and it's very informative and educational. I think a lot of people would get some good out of reading that book. I read it a year ago in my class, in my English class, and it still holds up, and it's definitely one of my favorite nonfiction books. So, yeah, if you're not comfortable with sensitive topics, then we totally understand if you want to skip this episode and move on to the next, and we advise it. This is something that we're doing for us, something that Brennan's doing for his grade, and you are not obligated to listen to it. So, thank you, and we will either see you at the end of the episode or in the next one. Bye! Alright, welcome back to Quantum Box. We finally found a time to record. We think we're cursed, honestly. We think we're cursed.
There is something going on. It seems like any time in the past 3 or 4 weeks we've tried to record it, something comes up, something doesn't work. We're cursed. The bot we used to record earlier was almost broke. Yeah, so it's not been going well.
Yeah, seriously. We changed our topic for this episode. In my last little announcement thing, I said we were going to do Greek mythology, but we decided that maybe the topic of Greek mythology has been cursing us to not record. Thanks, Medusa. But yeah, so today we're actually going to be talking about books and specifically Night. You want to explain that, Brennan?
So I've had a school assignment to basically just create a short podcast episode talking about a specific event in night. And well, what do you know? I already happen to have a podcast, so why not combine both? Do my assignment and have an episode since we needed to record anyways, and just do all of that at once. So we're going to be talking mostly we'll be spending a good majority of the time. The assignment was specifically to choose one event in the novel and spend a little bit of time talking about that. So a good portion of our time will be spent talking specifically about the time when the prisoners began to arrive in Auschwitz. So
hmm This is going to be a bit of a shorter episode today. It'll still probably be pretty lengthy, but we're not too sure quite how long it's going to be. So it might be super long, it might be super short. We'll see.
exactly. And quick announcement: we did just launch our website, so definitely go ahead and check that out. It should be um, on Anchor. There should be a little link that you can click to go to the website. If you're not able to find that, it should be qbpodcast.wordpress.com. We will get a new URL once we can afford one. But,
hmm
that's what it is for now. But make sure to go ahead and check that out. And you can contact us through there if you have any questions. You can leave comments, see all our new episodes and additional information and announcements. So make sure to go ahead and check that out.
Yep. Shall we start talking about the Holocaust then?
I believe we should.
All right, this is your homework assignment. I think you should start it.
All right. So, the part of the book that I chose to talk about specifically for this assignment was the time when the Jews, after they had been taken from where they lived and they were just getting to Auschwitz, when they before they got to Auschwitz, they went through the camp Birkenau. I believe it's pronounced. I'm probably pronouncing everything wrong, but so they went through Birkenau. They got processed. They got all their ID numbers and all that, and then they went to Auschwitz, which I believe Auschwitz was also a temporary camp, wasn't it?
Yeah, they spent 3 weeks in Auschwitz before they went to Buna to be doing the Camp Buna. I think I'm saying that right. To work on manual labor or yeah. But really quick, I just want to like talk about like the processing before they get to Auschwitz because that's scary. Like they first they separate all the children, the women, and the men, and then they like wasn't it that they forcibly cremated the children and the woman?
So, as far as I understood, I don't think it specifically said in the book, but as far as I understood, there were some. I think all children were immediately cremated, but I believe there were some women that did get to live, but it wasn't, as far as I understand, it wasn't as many as the men.
Because it was all based on like who's gonna do the most manual labor for us and who's gonna survive this horrible, horrible camp, which is God, that's not fun.
So through during the selection, as Alexis said, the men the men and women were separated, and then they sort of had like a line from the train cars, and then where there was like a crowd after they got out of the train cars, and they sort of separated into lines and had to go through like a selection officer, I think. And they asked them like their age, their occupation, if they're healthy, stuff like that. But before they had gotten there, one of the other, I think this person was already inside the camp near the fence. I don't really remember very well if they were in line with them or not. It didn't explain, I don't think it explained that part super, super well. Um, in the book, but from what I gathered, he was like on the other side of the fence, already in the camp, and he was telling them like, lie about your age, lie about what you did. If you don't lie, you'll die. Make sure you survive so that we can all get out of here. So he told Ellie to say, since he was 15 at the time, he told him to say that he was 18, and his father was, I want to say, a little over 50, and he said,
Mhm.
no, you're 40, say that you're farmers, say that you're healthy, because anyone who wasn't healthy or did something that was did a job that was useless to them or was too young or too old, they were immediately just gassed and burned.
So the main, I guess, what you would call the main character, the narrator of the book, Eli. His Elizer.
Yeah,
Um,
it was that.
his his mother and two sisters, I believe, they were killed, and he was left with his father to try and survive.
Yeah. Through the lines, once they were separated into the lines of men and women, they got up to the selection officer. After they asked, they would point them either to the left or the right. So one way led them to the furnaces, one way led them, I believe it was back into the next part of the camp. Um
That was like where that was barracks where the Jews who did survive, they were like disinfected and like stripped and shaved and showered and clothed in prison uniforms, stuff like that, because they had to be super pure and stuff like that, even though it's like it can't, yeah.
yeah, after they got through, I believe it was after they got through into Auschwitz, Ellie and his father got separated, as far as I remember it. And there was something that happened that caused them to get pushed. Like there was some commotion, and he was able to run to his dad. As far as I remember, it was, and that I think they got pointed off to the left, which is where they lived, and then I believe it was his father that got pointed off to the right, I want to say, and, something happened so that they got to the same side. There was, like, some commotion, and they were able to run across or something like that, so
And then, they stay in Auschwitz for 3 weeks, and they get their prison numbers tattooed, and they see some pretty scary stuff, I wanna say. Well, obviously, people being, like, just dealing with, like, the smell of, like, burnt
mhm.
bodies and, like, hearing screams and stuff, like.
Yeah. After they got into the camp, when they were just after they got into the camp, all of the prisoners were they were reciting, was it Kaddish? I think it was the Jewish prayer for the dead. And so during that,
Oh, yeah, I
yeah,
remember that.
during that, Ellie is like he gets really skeptical about that because he's like, well, we're not dead. Why are we honoring people who are still alive? Or like, why should we be doing this? One of the things he about that also, he was like, well, why should I thank God? I'm here. Like, why would he do this? Why should we thank him? So he began to get
Yeah.
skeptical about his faith like that as he went uh, through his time at the camp.
Yeah, I remember reading about, like, a specific part in this book. I read this a year ago, by the way, so some of my memory is a bit fuzzy, but I remember, they were all, like, standing in this crowd, and he, like, saw this one person, like, praying, and I remember he, like, thought to himself, like, questioning his faith and, saying essentially what Brennan was saying, like, if I'm here, then God doesn't exist, because why would God let us exist in a place
Yeah.
like this and let us
Mhm.
suffer this
And
much?
then there was the question that they had to go with, like, should we hope that we're gonna get saved or not? I think that Ellie, at the very beginning, at least, he definitely said was thinking, like, "Oh, we should hope for the best, hope we're gonna get saved," because when they meet their, there was, like, a distant cousin, I believe, that they met in the camp, and he was asking about the family. They were like, "Oh, no, they're all good. They're back home. They're safe. Yeah, everything's all good." So they were, like, giving him false hope, but I think they were kinda doing it because they were like, "Well, I would want the same. I want to hope that we're gonna be okay."
Yeah, and then this distant relative eventually learns that, like, his whole family is dead, and he's like, "Well, screw you,
Yeah,
Weiser."
I think he died shortly after that happened, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't remember what happened with him
I think
very
so,
well.
yeah.
And then after the 3 weeks, I believe it was, that they were in Auschwitz, they have to go for, wasn't it like a 4-day walk or something through the ice cold from Auschwitz to Buna?
Well, the 4-day walk, that was when they had to flee Buna when the Russians were coming closer
Mm,
to the front lines. It was from Auschwitz to Buna, that was like a 4-hour walk, but that was still, like, in the
yeah.
cold, it's, like, winter. There's still people, like, out, like, suffering, and, like, Eliza is still, like, questioning his faith,
Mhm.
stuff like that.
As I was it, I don't remember, was it when they were heading to Buna or when they were fleeing Buna that, after a while that his father kind of just, I think it was just after they had either gotten there or just after they had gotten to where they were fleeing to, his father kind of just like laid down and was like, "Nope, leave me. I can't." Was that when they were heading to Buna?
Um That's when they were fleeing, when they were forced to flee. His they were like they took a stop in, like, some abandoned town, and they found this, like, broken down, like, brick
Yeah, there was
building,
like a
and they, like, sat in there for a little bit, and then his dad was like,
yeah,
"Bye."
he was, I think a lot of people were they saw a lot of people just on the side of the path that they were walking on, just in the snow. They couldn't go on anymore, and his father was sort of like that, but
Mhm.
then he was like, Ellie was saying, like, "No, I need you. You're gonna survive. Let's go." and he was able to basically convince him
Yeah.
to continue on.
Yeah, but that's like way after because they spent like 3 months in Buna, so we should backtrack, talk
Yeah,
about Buna because that's where I remember Eliza starts like he works on some like electrical stuff. He meets this person who played the violin. He gets his tooth ripped
yeah. It
out.
was the French girl that he met that played violin, right?
I think so. Like there was some Jews who like if they had a musical like career or something, then they're like forced to entertain
I
the
don't think
Nazis. Do not quote
No,
me on that.
she wasn't in that. There were some people that were in like the band as far as I remember, but she was in like the back electrical shop, and that's where they met after he got beaten up by uh one of the capo, I
Uh,
think it was. I don't I don't
yeah,
remember all the
capo.
terms. Um but they were
Yeah,
after he got beaten up, she was like, taking care of him, and the entire time that they were working together, he hadn't heard her speak like at all. And then she was he thought because she was a little French girl, she was like, didn't know German or anything like that. And after he got beaten up and everything, and she was taking care of him, she started speaking perfect German. It was like, "Hey, I'm gonna take care of you. You'll be all right." Stuff like that. Um, I think one thing that
yeah.
was really interesting later on, a while after, many many years after he got out of after Auschwitz and all that, he met that same French girl on this like in the middle of Paris, just at a
Oh,
cafe
I
or
remember
something. She
that.
was walking by and he was like, "I know you," and started describing everything, and they had a really good relationship after that. Like, just the chance of that happening, of just running into her randomly. She was explaining, like, "Oh, no, I'm Jewish. I think she lived in Germany or somewhere around there," and she was like, "I had to pretend to not know German so that they wouldn't wanna kill me," and stuff like that. So she wasn't, like, an official, Jewish prisoner. There was another term for it, which I don't remember.
I remember probably, in my opinion, the most cringeworthy part of the book was when uh, Eliza is revealed to have like a gold tooth,
Oh,
and
yeah.
all the doctors are like, "We need that because we don't want you like selling that off and like getting money
Yeah.
and stuff." And he like delayed getting the
Yeah, he
tooth
was like,
removed.
"Oh, no, I'm sick. I can't. I don't feel good." Blah, so that he couldn't have it removed.
Yeah, and then ooh, what's the word? Um,
Oh, yeah, like, the capo leader, I think it was, like they got new capo leaders, I think it was the 2nd one or something, was like, "Alright, so give
mhm.
me that tooth or I beat you into a pulp." And so, he gives him the tooth so he'll be fine, and then, like, a week later, they get another new capo, so it was basically pointless.
That was when I was like, "Okay, I gotta take a break from this book for, like, a little bit because like, that part totally was like, "Oh, lord, no."
Yeah, um that was really bad. Just I mean, because that was all he had left. He was like, "No, I need to own something." Because like, if you have nothing, like, you'd wanna keep at least hold on to something, and then he got it taken, and then it was for nothing. He began to lose faith, at the beginning in Auschwitz when he saw the people being burned, but I think after that was when it seemed to.
I think I remember there being, like, a part in the book where he, like, officially thought to himself, like, "Yeah, no, this is worthless, like, I just need to focus on keeping myself and my dad alive. Screw everybody else."
Yeah. So, and then his father, I believe it was in Buna, when, he was like, "Oh, I need to go use the bathroom," and then one of the capo decided to just start beating him. I believe that was in Buna, and that was, so then, another thing that I thought was I was a little confused at the scene when there was like, oh, everybody go into lock. I think it was the first time, maybe the second, but when they were like, all right, we're going into lockdown, and it was like in the middle of lunch or something, and they see the guy like crawling out of his like cell block. I don't remember the name for it. And he was like, crawling over to the pot of soup that was left there. I was really confused at how that like what was happening there. Because afterwards it said like something like he screamed suddenly and plunged his face
Yeah.
into the soup and then got shot. I was like, wait, I'm really confused at what's happening here.
That both, like, was very cringeworthy, but it was also like, I have no idea what just happened.
Yeah, I don't think the book really explained that very well. Like I wasn't sure because there that was during an air raid, I think it was, and so it didn't. I couldn't really tell if it was the SS guards that shot him or if it was like the Russians thinking he was a guard and shot him from the air or something. Yeah, it was. I don't know. It was interesting, and then it was during a second air raid, or it might have been another one after. I don't remember if the soup thing was the first or second air raid, but during another air raid, that's when they all like have to go into. I think it was like a warehouse. The part where the guy steals something during an air raid and then he's sentenced to be hung. During that, I don't. It didn't really as far as I remember, it didn't really describe the scene very well. I think they were in like a big warehouse, or it might have been
I think
outside or something.
I think that was the moment when Eliza was like, "I give up on God." That I'm because he hears
Yeah,
somebody praying while they're forced to watch this guy who stole like some bread or something, like being hung, and then Eliza was like, "How can God exist?" I think that was when that happened.
I think it was. Yeah, but it was. No, it was in the central square that they erected the gallows. Um, and so they built that, and the guy that had stolen something during an air raid, they were going to hang him, and that was when he was watching. It was like, well,
Oh, I think it was the same air raid. There was the air raid where the guy was shot, and then in the same air raid, somebody like tried to steal something. Either it was like bread or something, and he was hung in that square.
it might have been the same. I thought it was separate though. And then we're then there was another thing where like you were saying where the child got hung. It was like him. I think he was somehow like a capo even though like he wasn't a Nazi, but he was still a kid. I was a little confused on that part too, how that was explained. But he and I think like two other people were like really close, and they had found out they'd been stealing weapons and stuff, and they were gonna like try and escape. I think it was. They found a huge stash of weapons. I don't know what they were gonna use it for, and so then they're like, "Oh, all right, well they killed the guy, the like original guy that had planned it and was doing most of the stuff, and then." Since they had been all together, they were like, well, automatically you two are in on this, and so they sentenced them to be hung. And I think it was around the same area that they did that. And when the kid got hung, that was also a part where he was like, well, why should I believe in God?
That also reminds me of another thing that happened while they were in Buna when Eli he tries to I don't know if it's like he tried to kill himself or like he wanted to escape so badly that he wanted to like jump over the electric fence. But I remember there was like a section.
It was it was at the it was at the I think what you're describing was at the very beginning when they before they had gotten or no, it was just after the selection process when they were like walking past the um furnaces where they were burning people. He was like, why should I go through that? I could just run and hit the electric fence and die
Yeah, I
immediately.
think that's what I'm thinking about. And then let's see, they was it a 3-month period or a 4-month period that they were in Buna?
I don't remember the exact amount of time, but they were in there for a couple months. And then there's also after I think it was a little while after the hanging of the child, when Elise is like, "All right, well, I'm just gonna save myself. Then there's nothing else I can do to help anyone." So he was like, "Well, I only live so that I can feed myself," and then stuff like that. When he didn't really, after that, he didn't feel bad as much for other people. Like when his father was getting beaten, he was like, "Well, I don't feel bad. You should have learned. This is your fault for getting beaten. You shouldn't
Oh,
have
I
done
remember
that."
that. That part was like both like semi confusing and also like one of the like hardest hitting sections of the book, I feel. Like
Yeah.
Eliza like loses his like all senses of morals and like feeling and compassion. That like I think that part was one of the most significant sections of the book.
hmm I think part of that was also just like them being like, well, since they had kind of given up hope on being saved at that point, they're like, all right, well, why spend energy on hoping? Why spend energy on feeling bad for people? You just need to just use all your energy to live, basically.
Yeah. Mhm. So then after, all that God stuff, there's a whole big section in that's like kind of at the near the end of their time at Buna, I believe, where Elizur's father is he has to go through a selection with some other workers to see if they can continue to work, and he is deemed too weak to continue working, and so him and Eliza are like, "All right, I'm gonna die. Here's my knife and spoon."
Yeah, the knife and spoon was really symbolic to him because that was his inheritance from his father, and it was just like the fact that he was able to give it to him was just like really special. Yeah. So then after I think it was after that day of work, I believe it was, or it might have been a day or two, suddenly
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, hey, there's my dad," and he happened to live because when his father was explaining it, he was like, "Oh, they selected more people, and I made it out this time."
This is when more of the Jews begin to lose their faith as well. Just because like they've been in this place for like 3.5 months now, and
Yeah,
they've had to go through like tortures and murders and like suffering of like unimaginable lengths, and so even like the most strong-willed Jews be like start to lose their faith.
yeah. After that, for a little while after the selection stuff with his father, is when winter starts to happen and it gets even colder, and that's when Ellie's foot starts to like swell up and he has to have surgery, and so he was in the hospital for like, what was it, 3 weeks or something?
I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, like his foot kept swelling and he kept getting fevers, and it wasn't like, he wasn't getting better, and
Hmm.
he was, like, really worried, like, "Oh my gosh, they're gonna kill me if I can't get better, I'm gonna die."
Yeah, because I remember he like avoided getting surgery on his foot for a pretty long time, and then he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm gonna get killed either way. Let's just get this over with."
Yeah, so then while his foot was still swollen, he tried to, like, get up and be like, "Nope, I'm good," and he was, like, trying to walk on it, and his foot was injured and bleeding, and he was trying to, like, convince them that he would be still a good worker.
That was also one of the parts that like kind of got to me because like the author's like description was so like beautiful writing, but like his like descriptions they were so vivid and stuff that like I felt the pain in my foot and I was like, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this.
Yeah.
But while he's he eventually he can't like stand the pain of having a swollen and bleeding and bruised foot. He's like, all right, let's do surgery. And then when he's recovering from like that, like I think it's like a 3 hour long surgery, like the Russians, like they come closer to the Tabuna, and then the Nazis are like, all right, time to pack up and leave.
that was when they were like, all right, either stay here and die or go with us and live. And so a lot of people left, but a bunch of people in the infirmary were like, well, we can't go anywhere, so I guess we'll die here.
I remember I remember there was like a pretty detailed section where he was talking about like the person next to him, and I can't remember
Mhm.
who like the person was like like crazy or something, and he was like, "Leave all hope behind, like we're gonna die anyways" and stuff, and he stayed there
Yeah.
and got killed. I think probably. Um,
Yeah, when they were given the choice to leave, a lot of them left, but like I was saying, those in the infirmary were like, "Well, we have to stay. We have no other choice." And Ellie, that's when his foot was like bleeding and broken even more, and he was like, "No, I'm good, I'm good," and tried to go and escape with them. And then they found out like a week later or something that the Russians had gotten the camp and freed everyone that stayed.
yep. That part, like, that was so painful for me.
So that's when they were like, in the middle of a snowstorm trying to evacuate out of Buna. So they had to that was when it was like a week through all the snow and everything.
Mhm.
So, that journey was they were all like they were basically running the entire time and through the snow with no protection, no food, any of that. And the SS were over there just, in their comfortable stuff, running alongside, and they had cars. They could just jump in the car and have another SS guard just take over and rest for a little while if they wanted.
Mhm.
They didn't care.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was bad.
Then they got to, another camp, right?
Um I believe before that they stopped like after 12 hours of running or something. They stopped in like an abandoned town and they were like in a broken down church or something, I think it was,
Yeah.
that they had to stay in for the night.
Mhm.
And that's when like they met the rabbi, and I don't remember a lot from that encounter, but at that point Ellie was still like, well, why believe in God? Why believe he would do this? I mean, he doesn't why would he do this?
Yeah, and that's when wasn't that when his dad was like, "Go on without me."
Yeah, that's when his dad kinda, like, collapsed there, and I think it was, like, in the morning when they were gonna,
They're
leave,
about
he was
to
like,
leave.
"No, leave me," because a
Mhm.
lot of people had been dead in the snow, and there was a lot of bodies that were just left.
Yeah, and, um
So after a little while of, there was, like I think it was, like, 4 more hours or something of them running after they woke up in the morning and left the abandoned place, I think they just, like, arrived at a train that they were all getting on cattle cars. I don't think there was, like, an actual town or anything that they got to, there just was train tracks and then all the cattle cars there, as far as I remember.
Yeah, I think when they fled Buna, it was like, "We're gonna go to these trains, and then the trains are gonna take you to another concentration camp."
Yeah. While they were on the way to I don't remember the name of the 3rd camp.
Um, Buchenwald.
Was it?
Mhm.
Well, when they were on their way, they in the cattle cars, they would go through towns and stuff, and all the people there were like, they would see them, and there were some people that were like, they had good intentions. They would throw money into the cart, and they're like, "Oh, I want to help them," and stuff like that. And then there was also people who would throw stuff like a single piece of bread into the car of 100 starving inmates for fun.
Yeah, and so, all these people are starving and desperate for money and stuff, so they would, like, legitimately, like, kill each other and, like, scratch their eyes out and stuff over a cent, and so Eliza's like she asks, one of the women, like, to stop because, people are literally killing each other over a coin, and she goes, "I like to give to charity," and it's just super, like, sad.
Yeah, she had good intentions, but it was making things worse with what she was trying to do.
Yeah, and then they would also be, like, throwing out, like, dead bodies because there's, like it was, like, 100 people in one cattle car, and then when they got to the concentration camp, there's, like, only 12 people left, right?
Yeah, there was like I think it was 12 or like 8 people. after they had gotten there, and they just I think they dumped bodies as they went, but I think after a while they just left all the bodies that were left in there after they got off.
And I remember Eliza's father. He almost got thrown off too because he was like still like dysentery
They
and
thought
like
he was
death.
dead.
They thought he was dead, so they're like so Eli had to like.
He was like, "No, don't," and he was trying to wake up his father because he was, like, passed out or something, and they're like, "No, he's dead."
I think I remember there was a part where, like, in that whole part, he like threw himself over his dad's body, and everybody was like, "Move out of the way" and stuff. And then
Yeah.
he slapped his father or something to wake him up. And I think he both like was like wake up, but he also like felt bad for slapping his father, right? Like I think I remember that was a
I
thing.
think so.
He like kind of got like a little tiny bit of compassion back, but it was like only towards his father, you know?
Yeah, and then once they get to the new, I think it was after they get to the train traveled for, like, what was it? I think it was a week or 2, and after they got there, after they got to where they, were going to, they what was it? They were living they had to while they were in lines, they would take snow and melt it to drink water, and, like, I think they would, like, melt it on each other's backs or something like that,
Yeah.
and, all the German soldiers were, like, laughing at them, and because, like, "Oh, haha, you have to melt snow for water."
I remember being so angry at that part.
Yeah, that was like, "What is wrong with you?"
Mhm. I mean, it's like they're literally like they're beating up and hanging and torturing and whipping these Jews. I mean, there's something wrong with them, because of their
Yeah,
beliefs, their racist beliefs and stuff.
yeah, and then it was, after that, I believe was when they got to a little while after that is when they got to the new camp. I don't remember as far as I remember, there wasn't a whole ton described at this camp because I believe the last camp it was closer to the end of the book, so there wasn't a lot that
Yeah.
happened. I mean, there was still a lot of terribleness, but there wasn't a lot of huge events written into the book that happened at that camp.
Yeah, they were there for like 2 weeks, I want to say, and Eliza watched
It
some
it
more
was a short
people.
amount of time.
Yeah, Eliza watched some more people die. He, grew more resentment towards his father for being like super weak. But then eventually, it was like the Americans came up and they're like, "Hey,
Yeah, I was it was no, it was at that last camp that his dad died. He got too sick to work anymore, and that's when he was in the infirmary, and he died from, I believe it was dysentery,
I think."
and then he just disappeared one day, like, under his father. He was, like, able to sleep with his father, in the same bunk, and then one day his father was just gone out from under, and he knew he was dead.
Well, yeah, I think because his father stayed alive for a couple days, and then yeah, and then he basically had to like dehydrate his dad because he's got dysentery. He can't like drink water or coffee or something. So his and the doctors were like, "Nah, your father's old and dying anyways," and so they just kind of like let him like starve and like dehydrate.
I think they still gave him food, but I think they were they stopped giving him water, or it's either they stopped giving him water or they weren't giving him enough, or they were doing something wrong.
Yeah, and yeah, there was like the other prisoners. They saw that Eli's father he was like dying, so they just like stole his food anyways.
Yeah, everyone I think after when his father wouldn't eat, I think Ellie, like, wanted to eat his father's food, but he felt too guilty to,
Mhm.
because he was like, "I wanna eat this, but if I eat this, I'll live longer, but also
Oh,
here's my
no.
dying dad."
I okay. Yeah, it was like he was like his father like stayed alive for like a week and a half, but he was getting beaten up over some food and like everybody was like he's dying anyways, but his like dad would like cry out and be like I need water, I need food and Eliza was like I'll give you my food and water, I guess. And then um there was some time when his dad he tries to like call out for water again and he gets beaten in the head. One of the SS officers like beat him in the head, and uh,
Yeah.
and then he was taken to the crematory the next day.
Yeah, that's when he was like, "Oh, my dad is gone," and then when he woke up and saw that, he was like for a moment, he was like, "Oh, finally, I don't have to deal with him anymore," and then immediately starts feeling guilty over that. As far as I remember, that was the last major thing that happened at Buchenwald, but then I think it was 3 or 4 months later, I believe, that was when the Americans were approaching, and when the Nazis found out about this, they're like, "Alright, well, let's kill everyone in the camp."
Yeah, because they're like, we've went through all this work to get Jews for manual labor and like stuff, and we're not just gonna let the American army free all of these Jews that we've been working so hard to capture and torture. And so they just like start killing thousands of Jews on the daily.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't remember how many days they had been doing that, but it was like, I think when there was still like 20 or 30,000 people left in the camp, that's when they were like, "All right, time to evacuate and also kill everyone." So as they were about to start evacuating, that was when there was, another air raid. So it's like, "Oh, nope, time to bunker down." And it was then when a battle broke out, and then I think it was then like past midnight or something after the battle and everything, they like left their units or cell blocks, I don't remember what it was called, and the American army was like, "All right, we're here to save you," and then the entire camp was liberated.
Mhm.
After that, after he got saved, Ellie's, he got food poisoning, I think it was,
Yeah, he like ate
and he
so
was
much or something like
yeah,
that.
he I think he ate, like, some infected meat or something like that, and he got food poisoning and was like, imagine how much that would have sucked to immediately gotten free, and then you actually get to start eating again, and then you get food poisoning, and you can't.
Right? God, that would suck. That's just like the cherry on top of like terribleness.
Yeah, and after that, I don't think he explained a bit more after the end of that, I believe, in the book, in the epilogue, but to the main part of the book, that was the ending.
Yeah,
Overall, I think it was a really good book. It really shows you what they went through with all of this.
honestly, it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite nonfiction book that I've read so far. Just because, like,
Mhm.
while it is like sickeningly like realistic and like detailed, like the writing is absolutely stunning, even though it's talking about such a terrible time in somebody's life. Like, I genuinely like I was very very happy to get such a good book in ninth grade.
Yeah, I was glad that I had to read this. I think if I beforehand, if I hadn't had to read this for school, I probably wouldn't have, but then
Yeah,
once
me
I
too.
did read it, I was like, "Oh, I'm glad that I did."
Yeah, you just like you learn a lot, and it's like you always hear about like what the Germans did and like how they were in the middle of the war, and like you hear a little bit about like their treatment towards like Jews and stuff. And then here's this book that just totally like flips the script, and you see all of like the horrifying things that actually went down. And I think it's while it's horrifying and like it's so terrible that like any like that happened, it's such a like cool learning experience to like read a genuinely interesting book about something like that.
It is, yeah, because usually a lot of the like, because I mean, like you're saying a bit, anytime you read a book that's on something like that, it's just a lot of the time it's just a fact book, and it's not interesting. But when a book is written like the way it is, you learn a lot because you're
Yeah,
interested in it.
and the fact that like a genuine like Holocaust survivor like had like the confidence, or I guess the bravery, to write about this horrible time in his life that basically like ruined his life for so many years, that the fact that he still wrote that book, like seriously, like thank you.
I mean, that's gonna haunt you forever.
Yeah, seriously.
So just yeah, like you're saying, the fact that he was just able to was amazing.
Yeah, and like the fact that it was like in such good detail as well. Like, it really shows you, like, how something can stick in your head. Like, throughout the whole thing, everything was described in perfect detail. Like, that's insane.
It was really interesting, yeah.
Definitely one of my favorite, books. Well, like, not even nonfiction books, just, like, books in general that I've read, like, just a really, like, genuinely really, really good book.
Oh, I agree. Well, if you've made it this far in the episode, just really quick, I want to say thank you. But also, I would recommend reading this book. I hope that our not really not review, but our
Summary?
general summary of the book. I hope that got you interested. So I would definitely recommend that you go read this book. But thank you very much for listening as far as you have.
Yeah, we skipped, like, so many
There was a lot of
details.
stuff we did not go over,
Mhm.
but I mean, if we went over every single detail, this would be like a 12-hour episode.
Yeah, seriously, and we got stuff to do, we've got other episodes to record, so, yeah, thank you very much.
All right, and on that note about other episodes, um, a lot of the time at the end of the episodes, we'll be like, "Oh, this is what we're planning for next week." So, just to go over that really quickly, um, we will not be recording and posting an episode next Saturday. We are planning on recording on Thursday the 6th and having the episode either out by around Saturday, maybe Friday or Saturday
Yeah.
is when you can or sorry, Friday or Saturday the 7th and 8th. And then also after that, um so we're for the next two episodes will sort of be like 1.5 week intervals versus planned 1 week, because since we're recording on the 6th next, after that we're planning on recording on the 16th versus the 9th, which is we normally record on Sundays and post on Monday or Tuesday afterwards. So instead of recording on Sunday the 9th, we're going to go with the 16th because that's so short after.
We've got some plans. We've got some plans to record twice a week. Our summers, once about like and like beginning of June, our schedules are both going to be very free and very very full, just with like vacation plans and other stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we're going to be recording twice a week.
Sort of like backup episodes in case we're not available or something. So definitely, we're definitely having a backup in case we can't record like the last 4 weeks. We
Yeah,
can still hopefully pump some episodes out.
yeah. So don't expect in the next couple of episodes, we're not going to have very specific updates about what the next episode's going to be about. So it's going to be a little surprise for all of us because we're not too sure what they're going to be about either. So
Yep. The one episode that we do know for sure after next episode number 6, is definitely we're going to go over basically D&D part 2, because
yeah,
if you watched the first episode, which you should have by now, just saying, we went over one of our D&D campaigns, because obviously D&D is ongoing still. We need to go over what we didn't from the point where we left off to where we are now. We need to continue going over.
yeah. So our plan for D&D is we're going to revisit the our campaign like every other episode, probably like every 3 episodes. We're going to revisit this campaign and just talk about it. And it might be longer just because not everybody can show up at a session every week, so there's not going to be as much material. And eventually, really quick, I will be starting my own campaign sometime soon, and I am probably not sometime soon. Within like the next 5 months, I'll probably be starting my own campaign, and I am planning on having a podcast about that. I'll just be recording the audio and then editing some of the best parts. Kind of like what you would expect from Critical Role or The Adventure Zone. So, more details on that will be in the upcoming months.
For sure. So thank you very, very much for listening. We really appreciate it. And we will see you in the next episode.
Yeah.
See ya.
See ya.